What's going on, you guys? Welcome to yet another edition of the Watch List in lockdown for a Friday to wrap up this week. Sadly, most times on Fridays, we do get the opportunity to maybe lighten up, chill out a little bit, have a little bit more fun. Not that we don't during the week, but we've got heaviness today, you guys. As everyone already knows, things are breaking all morning. Things happened last night, things that happened the day before. Definitely the freedoms in our country being taken away. And it looks like nothing but negativity is coming more. I hate to start it that way, but at least I do have Jessica Burbank to join me to help us navigate through these stories, give us some insight, some details, some analysis that only she can provide. How you doing, Jessica? She's also a contributor to Rebel HQ, TYT contributor, used here on all the shows, rising star amongst the network. How you doing, Jess?
Really good to be here. Happy Friday. Sad it's not Monday, and sad about the news today.
Absolutely, not Monday. Maybe we can re-trigger that around. But Fridays usually, they'll bury news stories on a Friday, but this is big stuff that continues to happen that everyone is talking about. So how do we jump right into this then?
We have just received word of a decision in one of the most consequential cases before the Supreme Court in decades. The justices have reached a final ruling on the Mississippi abortion law that prohibits nearly all abortions after 15 weeks and directly challenges Roe v. Wade.
Lester, in this historic decision, the Supreme Court has now overturned Roe v. Wade, and the follow-on case called Casey, in which the abortion right was made nationwide. Those two rulings stood for the proposition that states could not ban abortion before the age of viability. They could restrict it during that period up to about 23 weeks, but they couldn't ban it. Now the Supreme Court has taken that guarantee away. Lester, this is the first time the Supreme Court has ever granted a constitutional right, which it did so when Roe was decided in 1973, and then took it away, a popular right that was widely recognized. But this also now means that in roughly half the country, abortion is, as of now or soon will be, illegal.
And the reason it will be illegal is because those states have decided to do so. So it's, of course, it's been triggered. And of course, today, and I think in what scripts were written months ago, a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court has overturned Roe versus Wade. It was the most predictable thing we could see. The leaked document did show us that a couple of months ago. Let's get into some details of what the justices that ruled on this did say. Justice Samuel Alito, as expected, wrote the majority opinion that tossed out Roe, as well as a 1992 Supreme Court decision upholding abortion rights in a case known as Planned Parenthood versus Casey. He was joined in that judgment by the 5 other conservatives on the court, including Chief Justice Roberts. The court's 3 liberal justices filed a dissenting opinion to the ruling, which quickly drew protests to the Supreme Court building on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. Alito wrote this: "We hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled. The Constitution makes no reference to abortion, and no such right is implicitly protected by any constitutional provision, including the one on which the defenders of Roe and Casey now chiefly rely. The due process clause of the 14th Amendment," is what Alito continued. "That provision," he said, "has been held to guarantee some rights that are not mentioned in the Constitution, but any such right must be, quote, deeply rooted in this nation's history and tradition and implicit in the concept of ordered liberty." Remember those lines. "It's time to heed the Constitution and return to the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives," is what he also wrote. "The case that triggered Roe's demise after nearly a half century, known as Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, is related to a Mississippi law that banned nearly all abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy," which is what they mentioned in that clip at the beginning there on NBC News, Jessica. So we have all these different parameters and different opinions being thrown, but we've seen that from those 6 justices, the conservative justices on the court, they were put there specifically for things like this and something else that we're gonna get to in a couple more stories from here. It seems that the minority opinion of the country is winning.
Absolutely, yeah, and the due process clause, I mean, there have been timeless cases where people on the right are talking about this, saying that this is a poor foundation to secure the right to abortion in this country. They rely on, the right to privacy, which is described in the due process clause. But our right to same-sex marriage comes from that same part of the due process clause, the right to privacy. So are we going to see that overturned as well? It's absolutely the case that the minority is running the country via the Supreme Court, people who are not elected to serve, 9 people are making decisions that the vast majority of our country, disagree with. And the only thing I think that's giving me any hope at all is there's a really interesting case out of Florida right now. And if we want to talk about, what new precedent or what other part of the Constitution can our right to an abortion hinge on, I would say actually religious freedom. And so this really interesting case that's just in a county court is a synagogue that is suing the state for the abortion ban because in the Jewish faith, if there's a threat to a woman's mental health or her physical health, she should have an abortion. And so that's the kind of case that's directly about religious freedom that I think we could see going before the Supreme Court. But if it's the Supreme Court we have today, do I think that they'll rule in favor of the synagogue? Unfortunately, probably not.
Well, actually, and when we look at the Supreme Court, as we've heard, they're carrying the water for many Christian conservatives in this country who believe that when they say something like, religious liberty, what they're actually saying is Christianity dominates our religious liberty. And liberty being, we tell you what we believe and you have to go along with it because we're the supreme beings of this country. Let's not mince any words about this. Anything that's getting now pushed through, from this actually very long held plan to get these types of justices on the Supreme Court will favor the richest, the whitest, the most cis, if we can say these types of things, if those things exist, cisgendered male in the country. That's just that's how these things work. And they go for it with education, they go for it with housing, they go for it with our judicial systems itself. So this wasn't an accident. This is exactly what Mitch McConnell was talking about. So let's go ahead and name the names of the people who are responsible for it. Mitch McConnell talked about this when he rejected Obama's Supreme Court pick and said, well, I don't care. This is what we're doing. In this year, we will not appoint Barack Obama's Supreme Court pick because we need to implement people on the court that do what we want them to do. Not because the way things are actually working when presidents are supposed to appoint Supreme Court justices. Mitch McConnell's a part about this. Nancy Pelosi is a part about this, and the establishment of the Democratic Party that continues to back establishment Democrats who then support things like this. This has been getting floated around on Twitter this whole morning. Henry Cuellar, who won in Texas, establishment Democrat who is in support of things like this. But the party coalesced around him when a progressive challenger came forward that represents the actual majority of Americans. This is the state we're in, and these are just a couple of reasons why. And our society hasn't really caught up with what it is that's happening yet on a large scale. Your last thoughts on this before we move on?
Yeah, absolutely. Republicans always talking about being the party of freedom, and you're exactly right that we need to interrogate what they mean by that. Freedom for who? It's freedom for white people, freedom for men, freedom for people who have money, and people who are Christians. That's exactly what they mean. My mom said to me this morning when I broke the news to her, my daughters have less rights than I did. That's really the state that we are in this country. And today I'm honestly just worried about women who are living in red states, who are going to need to have an abortion for whatever reason, who are going to get one that is unsafe and be disabled, lose their ability to have children or lose their life. These are dangerous procedures, and many people can't afford to travel to states where they can get access to this care. And oftentimes abortions are medically necessary where a woman's life is threatened by her pregnancy and she needs an abortion to live. So to some extent, this is also about the right to life, not just religious freedom or the right to privacy. And these are really important things to be thinking about today because in this moment, we've got to fight, right? There's not going to be a solution. There's not going to be a moment where they say, well, maybe, as states, we should, slow things down and not pass these abortion bans right away. I don't think we're going to see that. They're going to pass them as soon as they can. And so as people, we've got to come together in solidarity and take care of one another. One thing that gives me a lot of hope is, there are these people making videos on the internet like, hey, I live out on this farm in a state where there's no threat of abortion bans. If anyone gets a COVID case and wants to come over and heal for a few days, you can come over. We really need that kind of solidarity right now.
Yeah, well, and as we go out of this, just look at the map. As you mentioned, states that already implemented or will implement have trigger laws in place or already had complete and total abortion bans in the first place, as you can see there. And with that, while you're looking at that, just remember, Right now, today, 61% majority of the United States adults say that abortion should be legal in all or most cases, while only 37% think abortion should be illegal in all or most cases. And that's the United States of America, this country that talks about the shining example on the hill that does the bidding of its people. Not the case. It's just not the case. Let's go to this next story because the leader of the country doesn't appear to be leading.
Well, our favourite, the leader of the free world, he's created a stir again by displaying to the whole world just how feeble and uncertain he is and how every little public utterance and move needs to be carefully managed. Have a look at this briefing in the White House and note what Joe Biden has in his hands.
The phrase that I found noticeable was there's a difference between states that say may and say shall. If you have to say you shall give, you shall do A, B, C, they're the ones that are going to have problems. But most say may. I mean, may and I got it reversed, may and shall.
Yeah, it's all about that card the president has in his hands. It's his note from staffers telling him what to do at the event.
Forgive the playing of that particular guy from Sky News, but so there's Joe Biden as we're talking about as he's in an event there to speak, if you would presume so. But what everyone's talking about is the card that he was holding there that had instructions on very simple, normal things that a human being could maybe do in a meeting room like this. As they zoomed in closer, let's look at it, because those things written on this says "you" in capital letters. Into the Roosevelt room and say hello to participants. You take your seat. Press enters. You give brief comments, 2 minutes. Press departs. You ask Liz Schuler, president is. So it goes through all of his very step-by-step things, from how much he even takes his seat to ask certain questions, to thanking people, to moving, to standing up and then departing. It doesn't look good from a president that gets a lot of ridicule for being geriatric and slowing down, mental state, losing himself. All those things are now gonna be in hyperdrive, but I mean, almost maybe for good reason when you see something like this. So this also comes as these fears, as we know, Joe Biden is 79 years old, he's gonna be 81 by 2024, and people are wondering, maybe he's not ready to run for re-election. Even from the beginning, Jessica, I remember he was saying, I'm not sure, maybe I'm just a one-term guy. He didn't say it in those terms, but when people were asking, he definitely hinted at it in that way. So other Democrats like this woman here you might recognize has said before her fears and not sure about whether or not Biden is the next best option for the Democratic Party. Remember this?
President Biden, he is saying he's going to run again in 2024. Will you support him?
You know, if the president chooses to run again in 2024, I mean, first of all, I'm focused on winning this majority right now and preserving a majority this year in 2022. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But I think if the president has a vision, and that's something certainly we're all willing to entertain and examine when the time comes.
That's not a yes.
Yeah, you know, I think we should endorse when we get to it, but I believe that the president has been doing a very good job so far, and you know, should he run again, I think that I think it's we'll take a look at it.
Okay.
But right now we need to focus on winning a majority instead of a presidential election.
Now, this wasn't based off of any cue cards or anything telling them every step to take. But I will say this, Jessica, there's one thing, because I did bring this up to my wife this morning when I saw it. And I said, it just doesn't look good. I said, but at the same time, I'm trying to figure out how regular this is. And she did tell me, she does, she's a musician and a singer, and they do live shows. And many times when it's one of these very big, maybe it's like a wedding gig and it's a very particular, a very well, tightly run event. She says even when it comes to performers like them, they got cards where they say 8:46, make sure you stand up. 8:52, announce that this person comes in. It's almost like telling every step of what to do when it comes to such an important event. So maybe it's not just about him being old, but then again, that's just one particular example. We don't know if this is always the situation when it comes to a president.
Right, I think that's absolutely true. When I worked on campaigns and we had big events, we called these things a TikTok, and it was a minute-by-minute description of everything that's happening at the event. However, these schedules were the same for everyone. They didn't say things like, you take your seat, and the you is in all capital letters. It's almost like Biden forgets that he's the person that's supposed to be in charge, and you have to take your seat is not something that I think we would ever need to put on our run of show of everything that's happening. And so this kind of suggests that someone made this card for Biden, but if he needed a card that said, you take your seat, you talk to this person at this time, why would you think he had the mental capacity to be a good steward of the card and not show it up so that everyone can see? There should have been a line on there that's like, you do not show this card. And what this really comes down to is it's time for him to retire, I think. I think it's pretty clear we've seen enough that he's really not performing as he was back in the day when he was in the Senate. It's really, not the same politician. We really need a strong leader right now. We're facing the rise of fascism in this country. I understand that we've experienced some gridlock in Congress and it's difficult to get legislation passed. But we need someone who's actually going to give speeches that, unite the party, that motivate people. We need someone who's going to lead. That doesn't just mean passing legislation or passing Build Back Better. We need someone who's going to fight this fight, and Biden doesn't seem fit to do that.
Well, and there was also a story I remember seeing maybe a few weeks ago where he was frustrated by his handlers and the way that they're telling him to do certain things and be a certain way. Hey, bro, if you're frustrated by your handlers handling you like this, you're the president, bro. There was this president that preceded you that did nothing his handlers told him to do and continues to do so, and they fell in the line behind him. As crazy and as off the wall as he is, you can do what you want, And by the way, there's just one more, my last thought on this. If someone is losing their mental acuity, or if someone is in a downgrade later on in life, I really don't see it as something that we're saying, oh, so weak. It's a human reaction. Some people go through these things. We're still studying when people have their mental declines and things like this. I'm not saying he's got Alzheimer's, but we're studying things like Alzheimer's to find out the potential remedies and things like that. I don't see it as a, see, you suck. It's more of this is a job that your particular state isn't prepared for anymore. That's just all really is to it. And the reason Donald Trump caught all that hell from everyone else that opposed him is because he goes out ahead of the game and starts criticizing people, calling them old and geriatric and can't think and can't move, when he has those same problems. That's where the criticisms for Donald Trump came in. Don't talk about other folks when you're the ones that also dealing with the same situation. I don't think the country needs either one of them. Let's keep it real. Well, let's move on to this next story before we go to our first break, because it was going to wrap up this whole block of devastating Supreme Court decisions. Let's watch.
It's important for people to understand that this is a radical decision by the Supreme Court that is the product of a 50+ year chess game that has been played by the gun industry. That does not represent gun owners. It's often said that you're entitled to your own opinion, but not to your own facts. You're also not entitled to your own history. And that's exactly what the Supreme Court is trying to do here. This challenges over 200+ years of jurisprudence and undoes that. This decision will get Americans killed. It is a severe danger to the American people and the domestic tranquility, which is in the preamble to the Constitution, right? This is not what a well-regulated militia looks like.
We just got a statement, David, from March for Our Lives, and the very first sentence of it says this: young people will die as a result of the court's decision. Do you believe that?
Yes, I do believe that that's true.
That is March for Our Lives founder David Hogg, also school shooting survivor back in Marjorie Douglas High School that happened back in 2018. Speaking about the latest Supreme Court decision that's striking down a New York state law that was making it more difficult for folks to carry a concealed handgun outside of their home. Again, let's not forget what we just talked about a few minutes ago when it comes to Roe versus Wade. But either way it goes, as we heard from Hogg, he does believe this ruling will result in more people dying. He's not the only one who thinks so. But first, let's go into details of what they did. The New York law at issue required concealed carry permit applicants to demonstrate a special need for a license beyond a basic desire for self-defense. In striking down the law, the court's conservatives ruled that the so-called proper clause requirement prevented law-abiding citizens with ordinary self-defense needs from exercising their right to keep and bear arms. The ruling's broad sweep amounts to a complete overhaul of the court's Second Amendment doctrine and is expected to call into question a wide range of other gun laws. That's according to legal experts. Now, this ruling, it sets the stage to turn down some other things, because also in that interview, David Hogg pointed out, hey, thankfully, at least some of this legislation that we've been coming towards with this bipartisan nature between the Senate and the House, amazingly, on some kind of gun reform that some Republicans got and also some Democrats got what they wanted, some aspects of that could potentially be on the chopping block because of this decision. It's all connected. Here's how. So this decision could hamper other efforts to pass modern gun control measures. According to Adam Winkler, a professor at UCLA School of Law, the ruling means that for a gun law to be constitutionally permissible, it must be consistent with historical patterns of gun regulation. Historical patterns of gun regulation. A law like a red flag law, part of the Senate compromise, is a new modern innovation, he said. There's no historical tradition of taking guns away from people who are in crisis. Closing the boyfriend loophole is now called into question by this opinion because there's no historical regulation of prohibiting boyfriends who engage in domestic violence from possessing firearms, is what he also added. So again, just like Roe versus Wade, as they say, this isn't making abortion illegal, it's just giving the rights back to states to make it illegal. In this case, it's like, yo, listen, we're just saying that New York can't do what they want. States' rights, number one, and number two, the things that are now being legislated potentially do something, as little as it is, about our problems. They can say that's not consistent with our history. The founding fathers didn't know anything about boyfriends shooting girlfriends and in domestic violence. They didn't put that in the Constitution. So therefore, we can challenge that as well.
Jayar makes the really important point here that the Supreme Court is making this decision about this case that they took from New York because it's going to set a precedent about what other states can do with their gun rights. We're really states' rightsing our way out of some rights, but it's also states' rights unless the right doesn't like how the states, are applying those rights in laws for their people. And this particular gun law is kind of common sense, right? You can't leave your house with the gun and go about your day-to-day life in public with the gun. Of course, private establishments can still say, we own this business, you can't enter with the gun. But it's about, being in public spaces with your gun. Do you need it? And so what this law in New York did was made it so that when you apply for a concealed carry permit, you have to say that this is for self-defense and have a reason for needing it. This is so that people, who are aggressors, who have guns because they like the power that they provide, they want to commit acts of violence, they can't go out in public with a gun. It makes pretty straightforward sense. And as someone who uses handguns, who thinks a lot about, what our rights mean and our rights being stripped away, I think my, official stance on this particular story is you don't need a gun in Wegmans, bro. Like in New York, if you're going out in public and you think you're going to need, the Second Amendment right is for a free and to form a militia, right? A well-regulated militia. The militia is not meeting in the public park. I mean, seriously, you still have your right to bear arms. You can keep your gun at home. You can use it and exercise your right to self-defense if you're under a violent threat. It was straightforward. It doesn't make sense that they made this ruling.
I want to point out one particular thing because you said how you're a gun owner and you think about our rights a lot. It's graphic 6, you guys, because one of the consequences that do come from this, and I've heard many people who were not big gun nuts say similar things. This is one of those consequences that come with this, which again, I'm gonna jump down to graphic 10 after this and drive this point home. Graphic 6, a lot more people are going to go out now and get guns. And for the wrong reasons, is what Richard Alborn said. He's president of the nonprofit Citizens Crime Commission. I have people telling me they decided to get a gun that I never dreamed would go out and get a gun. They're not going to use it illegally, but they're feeling this need to arm themselves in a way that I've not seen before. Crazy how that works. Now graphic 10, because as politicians on the right were celebrating this, so was the NRA president. He says this is another landmark win for constitutional freedom and the NRA. A win for the NRA, he says. That's Wayne LaPierre, the gun rights lobbyist executive vice president. This decision unequivocally validates the position of the NRA and should put lawmakers on notice. No law should be passed that impinges on the individual freedoms. So he's happy because look, more people are gonna go out and buy guns. That's good for the NRA because we lobby for people to make more money in the gun industry in general. And other folks are saying, hey, we're gonna need to get more guns because everyone's flooded with guns and we now have no protections to keep people from walking out and say, I need to defend myself, so I'm gonna shoot you in the face. Because let's keep it real. That's a big portion of their decision and thought process when it comes to this. Money and then violence. Let's take our first break, you guys. I'm not sure if we can do the 2-minute. I know I jumped over. If we can, let's go to our 2-minute break, you guys. And then get to maybe a couple of y'all's comments. There's so much happening today. So I wanna jump right back into everything. But Mo Brooks is flipped yet again. Can't wait for that story when we come back.
everyone, to another episode of The Damage Report, another week of the news. I am John Idarola, and we've got a doozy of a show for you. My God, is DC up its own ass today. We have put someone into power in our country who is so crazy, they have finally out-crazied North Korea.
The US is the only country in the world that isn't part of the Paris Climate Accord.
Yesterday, Donald Trump did exactly what he told us. He pulled the US out of the Iran nuclear accords.
So we need to see snuff videos of how you're killing people on the streets in order for you to believe us that this has been a problem. We need to change things.
I was gonna say we've been dealing with the issue of lead poisoning in this country, but that would imply that we're really doing something. We have an issue with lead poisoning and it continues. So 60 people are now dead. Some of them grandmothers, many of them children. The silence of politicians on both sides of the aisle. Just about only Bernie Sanders, maybe Tulsi Gabbard, and a few others have actually been critical of what happened there. And the rest are cowards hiding behind silence, refusing to admit what happened yesterday.
We have to be able to accept that we do things wrong in this country. You can fix and change things, make things even.
What's great about our country, and this is a great example of it, is everybody's pissed off. This is The Damage Report, and it's all about the threats facing us each day. When something's relevant, and it's hot, and it's in the news, you're not supposed to talk about it. Can we start talking about it now?
I often think about the terror that my grandmother was under until she was 8 or 9 years old, and how horrific that experience must have been in this state of discomfort for the benefit of other people.
People will still treat you like you're the problem. That's what we mean when we say living well black. We're just trying to live our best life. We're trying to be the best that we can be, and we're frustrated and tired of people treating us like we're criminals.
Back on the watch list, you guys. Quickly back, because we have so much happened, but I do want to read this TYT member comment because it just wraps it all up. Jess B. Anti-Racist says, yesterday, Supreme Court said the states do not have the right to make their own decisions on constitutional gun laws. Today, SCOTUS said that the states do have the right to take away a woman's constitutional right to their own health care. The very definition of hypocrisy, 100%. Also, by the way, as far as those gun rights, do you think you're gonna be concealed carrying outside of any of these Supreme Court justices' homes anytime soon? Do you think you're gonna stroll by in front of their houses with a concealed carry and be like, hey, I'm just from New York. I was just worried about protecting myself in front of a Supreme Court justice's house? No, they jumped right on that law right away. I think we're understanding who the important people of the country are. Here's an important person in the country, but he's kind of sliding. Let's start here.
America does not need any more weakling, cowering, wimpy Republican congressmen and senators.
On January 6th, I proudly stood with President Trump in the fight against voter fraud. I'm running for the Senate because I'm tired of debt junkie, weak-kneed, open-border rhinos who sell out our conservative values. That's why President Trump endorses me and why Mitch McConnell opposes us. I'm Mo Brooks, and you better believe I approve this message.
Oh, you better believe it, Mo. That's Mo Brooks' campaign ad back when he was still on Donald Trump's good side. That love-hate relationship is now set on permanent hate, I feel like, because he just lost his bid for Senate against other Republican Katie Britt, who Trump then dropped his endorsement from Mo Brooks and switched it to Katie Britt, partially because Mo Brooks had a half a second of weakness when he said, let's move on from that 2020 election. Suddenly he's woke, suddenly it's over, then he loses. Now, Mo is kicking off a bit of a revenge tour as he has announced that he's open to speaking to the January 6th committee. Weird how that works, because he was speaking to all the foot soldiers before they went to the Capitol. He says how much he supported everything Donald Trump did, and now he's ready to talk about what was said to him. Hopefully, we'll see. Because his origin story here, let's go through this tweet thread, because his origin story did start as this villain that he's gonna become, that Donald Trump created. I wanna go through this from Olivia Beavers. She wrote, Mo Brooks tells me he's retiring from politics after the quote bad guys won, referring to Katie Britt, who beat him out for the Senate Republican nomination in Alabama. Asked if he's now more open to testifying before the 1-6 panel, but he reiterated his demands for a public hearing among some others. He said, well, I've never said absolutely no, and I've never said absolutely yes. I've never been served with a subpoena, so it sounds like he's waiting for that. Brooks also took aim at Trump in this. This is the good part about this. He says the big loser in the election in Alabama yesterday was Donald Trump. Olivia asked, why is that? Brooks said, he's not a man of his word. Said Trump has no loyalty and won't do anything unless it enhances his wallet or his ego. Excuse me. Weird how Donald Trump just now made that point to Mo Brooks after this whole back and forth, after his whole campaign, after he was in office for 4 years. We know Donald Trump cares about his wallet and his ego, but for some reason, Mo Brooks just figured that whole thing out. Now, as far as this whole thing with talking to the January 6th committee, he does have stipulations because he just might incriminate himself. So here's his stipulations. He signaled on Wednesday that he would comply with an impending subpoena from the bipartisan House committee that is leading the inquiry into the attack on the Capitol, but only under certain conditions. My basic requirement is it be public so that the public can see it, so they don't get bits and pieces dribbled out. He also said he'd testify only about matters related to January 6th and wants to see copies of any documents before the panel may ask him about it. So investigators have also sought to question him about his interactions with Mr. Trump in the aftermath of the attack. So we'll see if he actually comes clean with it. But then again, he's definitely worried about his ass. Let's keep it real. What are your thoughts, Jessica?
Yeah, we never really have to wonder too much what the motivations are with these guys. It's always about power, especially with Mo Brooks, right? He's criticizing other people for doing the same thing that he does all of the time, which is, when he had Donald Trump's endorsement, when he had the backing of the Trump Republicans, he was all fully on board. But then when it looked like power was shifting after January 6th, it's, well, maybe we should move on and think about some other things. When he wanted Trump's endorsement, Trump was great. And when he thought Trump's endorsement would benefit him, that would be great. Now that he doesn't have it, now that he's lost, he's distancing himself and potentially will testify against Trump. It's really about power. I mean, he can get a lot of airtime if he testifies, in the January 6 hearings, because right now he's coming out of a campaign loss. What is he going to do next? This is the obvious next thing to do if you're motivated by power. We don't really have to wonder what the motivations are, why he's doing what he's doing.
He's been doing it the whole time. Also, there was one other question that he was asked, and that part of that thread from Olivia Beavers there said, he says he's retiring now that he's had that loss, and he says he's gonna do what normal people do and have a little bit of fun. He's got grandkids, he wants to hang out with family. Maybe that's the case, but before that, he's gonna definitely get his revenge because he's thinking nothing is more truthful than a politician who's decided not to go back and run again. Because suddenly the chains are off and they're allowed to speak their mind. And they're very open about saying so. And it's pretty damning for what the rest of politicians are doing and saying. If you can now speak the truth because you're not gonna be a politician, that says everyone that stays in politics is not speaking the truth. And they just say it openly. That's why we have Adam Kinzinger on the board, on the panel right now, and why he's being so truthful. Let's keep it real. Let's jump to this next story. Herschel Walker continues to step in it and over and over and over and over again.
I wanted to ask about recent reports about your children that have just come out. How do you square those reports with your feelings and your previous comments on black men and housing black households?
Well, one of the things it is people know that I support my kids more than anything. I love them to death. And if they call today, I'm running over to see them. And I've always have. And everyone know the whole thing, the truth with the story. And that's what's so sad that they're putting my little kids at jeopardy. One of my sons that he wanted to be out in the public, came out in the public, and he talked a lot. And I have to have security for him. Right now, they're putting my young one at risk as well. That's one thing I'm not gonna do.
Will you bring them out on the campaign trail at any point?
I won't put them at jeopardy of being unhealthy. Right now, you've seen what's happening. You see what's happening with the Supreme Court justices, and right now, things are not safe to have people around because when people disagree with you, they seem to want to hurt you.
Weird how that works. He's completely ignoring what happened on January 6th. But there's Herschel Walker talking about his revelations about the multiple children that he does have that he'd been hiding before, while he hypocritically talked about how black men need to do something about taking care of their children. But for some reason, that reporter asked him about that very situation, and he flipped it to say, I'm not gonna bring my children out on the campaign trail because I get threatened. The children that I've actually cared nothing about. I mean, that's just from the facts that are coming out now. But the big irony of this, and again, I wasn't gonna talk about this before. I remember this was coming out and I was like, yeah, Herschel Walker, clown, people can see who he is, but I'm not gonna go and jump on him as far as this kids out of wedlock thing until he started talking. And someone else named Christian Walker, his son that he has been putting forward, and everyone does know is his son, was also talking. The last time he talked about this, he said some pretty outrageous things that match up a lot with what he should probably tell his father. Watch.
So it's been announced that Nick Cannon is having his 9th kid, meaning he has 2 women pregnant at the same time. Nick Cannon is everything wrong with men in America. Get home and raise your kids! Oh, so he's too busy banging women to take care of his current kids. He can't control his dingling. He's out hooking up with all these women, multiple women pregnant at the same time. What is this, his 5th, 6th baby mama? Get home and raise your kids and take care of the women you're knocking up. Can you control your thing for 3 seconds? I get it. You want to go bang everyone. Can you just stay home and raise your kids? Oh my gosh. Control your thing.
Words that I think he meant to tell his father. Either way it goes, he hasn't said much since then, but he did have this one vague Father's Day tweet where he said, "Raise your damn kids, 2022. Again, I think he meant to text that to his father, but instead he actually put it on Twitter. So, by the way, again, I wasn't gonna jump on this whole thing until Herschel Walker came out saying things like this. Let's get it from his own words.
I know the fatherless home is a major, major problem. And Herschel Walker, who was born in Wrightsville, Georgia, I took care of a lot of people in my hometown. I took care of a lot of the places around where I grew up. I was being like a father to some of those kids that may have had fathers. The problem we have is we're going back to this mentality that the father leaves in the black family. He leaves and leaves the boys alone. All these riots and all these things going on, has anyone talked about a solution? Everyone talking about all this stuff. Here's the one solution. I said, guys, what we need to do is let's say, okay, Herschel, and I blame myself, but I'm gonna tell you what I'm doing. I said, what we need to do is let's go in our neighborhood and let's become fathers of those fatherless child. Parents getting involved with your child is very, very important. But also adults getting involved with kids, because some kids do not have a parent, a mother or father. So I don't think I want to leave that kid behind.
So as long as Herschel Walker's talking about fatherless children and going back into your community and raising them fatherless children, because black folks, that's the problem. Black folks have a problem with fatherless children. Again, he's seen the Republican mantra. If you're the black person, you go in there and you dog out black people irresponsibly, while you're one of those folks that you say is the worst of the worst. Some details here. On June 14th, the Daily Beast reported that Walker has a 10-year-old son whom he does not see and whom he did not legally acknowledge until being taken to court. Then on June 15th, that's one day after June 14th, the Daily Beast reported that Walker has a 13-year-old son as well. In confirming this, Walker's campaign has also disclosed that he has a daughter who is about 40 years old. Of course, he had her when he was 20 years old when he was running back down there in Georgia. So the names and identities of these kids and the mothers are kept under wraps, but definitely it's been multiple women, multiple children, some that had to be taken to court to take care of and acknowledge and see. Yet at the top of this whole thing, we saw the reporter ask him about it, and he said, "I'm not gonna bring my kids out because you guys are threatening me, and I don't want to put them in danger." They're nowhere near danger, Herschel. You don't talk to them. Again, according to these court hearings, I'm not in your children's lives, but from what we're finding out, neither are you. Maybe you should skip that whole thing about dogging out black fathers, since you're one of those people that you like to say dogs out their children.
Yeah, this whole situation is disturbing. I learned in my early 20s, right? If someone else's behavior triggers me in some way, maybe I shouldn't speak from that place. Maybe I should reflect on why I'm triggered with something that absolutely isn't my business. You learn that sometimes, you're speaking from a place of trauma or your insecurities. And so if you're triggered, maybe you should reflect on that instead of speaking on it. And we can learn so much about politicians and public figures who do this all the time, but they really need to take a step back and think, am I speaking on something that is a policy matter or something that's a conversation in public discourse? And if you're coming from this place of speaking from complicated emotions within yourself, you're not really in a place to be thinking about policy-oriented solutions. What are the greater problems in the community? What is the root cause? And to just demonstrate what that looks like, the solution for this exact phenomena is we need better mental health care. We need health care. People are sick. Our public discourse is so dominated by people speaking from a place of being triggered because there's so much trauma. Like, people really need to heal in order to have real conversations about how we fix the problems in our society. So Medicare for all, in conclusion.
Yeah, well, I mean, anytime a politician runs, especially someone who's not a politician and thinks, oh, I can just throw these talking points around and then I can get in office, that's when we come to people like Herschel Walker speaking the way that they speak. And apparently it's working for him. Look, he got the nomination. It says a lot about the supporters and the members of the Republican Party more than it does about him. He's just like, hey, I'll take it. You guys are suckers. Let's go to this next story, because we got influencers gone wild. Now, keep in mind, you guys, this is an influencer video where someone gets pretty badly injured. So if you're a little queasy about that type of things, look away for just a second. Here we go. Ambulances were called in that stunt that went wrong. That was Jeff Wettick, the man that was swung from that crane into the side of a crane. And he's now suing his former friend who was apparently part of this entire thing. YouTuber David Dobrik, he sued him for $10 million over this whole thing that went wrong. Let's get some details of how this went wrong and the drama that unfolded afterwards, because this is not just a basic story, it comes to that. There's a lot of backstabbing here. So in this lawsuit obtained by the TMZ, former Vlog Squad member Jeff Wettick says he traveled to Utah Lake in Provo, Utah, the summer of 2020 with David and a group of friends to shoot a video as part of Dobrik's social media comeback. While he doesn't list the specifics of his injuries in the lawsuit, Wettick has previously discussed what happened that day, saying he almost died, breaking his foot, hip, tearing a ligament in his leg, and shattering his skull in 9 places. He also says he almost lost an eye. Now, Wettick and Dobrik, they were like this, they were on great terms. They were part of this whole influencer group, YouTuber creator group, and they had this accident and things kind of fell apart. Since they released a docuseries on the whole thing as well, they're really benefiting from this. But now Wettick says that Dobrik should take some responsibility even though they were both part about this whole thing. Let's watch more about his thoughts.
I want to get through some points because I've been protecting this guy for so long. And there's so much more to the story than just him not texting me for a week after I had such a drastic surgery where I could have been blind. It felt really good to get that off my chest. It felt good to get that out there. It felt good to hit that unfollow button. You know, I woke up from surgery and a day goes by, no text from him. Another day goes by, no text. I look at his Instagram because it's the first one that always pops up because the algorithm or whatever. And it's just him like, oh, I'm so happy with my life right now, my vlogs and everything, just promoting his vlog. And I was just like, you got time to do this, but you can't text me and be like, hey, did you go blind or not from my actions? I just want to tell the truth finally. Like I gave this mother so many chances. Even now, a week later, I still haven't heard a peep. I've been posting on Instagram because it feels good. Because you fucked me so bad mentally and physically that, yeah, this is how I cope now.
It's gotten pretty bad. Let's skip that next video, you guys, because it did show just how bad this could have been. Someone else turned this whole thing down. But I want to go to this beef that they've now developed. Let's go to graphic 4, because additionally, Wettick recalled how Dobrik allegedly offered to cover his medical bills. But Wettick claimed Dobrik didn't pay an effing bill, and he now has an infraction on his credit. So as for Dobrik, he also said publicly, shared his side of the unfortunate stunt. On his own podcast, Views, in March, Dobrik said of this incident, the Jeff thing is the effing worst. That day is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Dobrik has also mentioned that the stunt was Wettick's idea. Here comes the backstabbing. I think one of the main reasons Jeff is bummed with me right now is because I broke a promise. He's like, can you promise me one thing? Can you just promise that no one ever knows that this was my idea? Is what Dobrik said about Wettick. Now, that's not up to us to figure out which one of them is telling the truth, but it's definitely an illustration of once things go sideways, nobody's really anyone's friend anymore at all. It's crazy. What are your thoughts on this, Jess?
Super sad. You know, I spend a lot of time on TikTok, so I think a lot about what it means to really be a creator. Like there are people on that app that I categorize in pretty much two different ways. It's pretty obvious who's who. So there are people who are entertainers who genuinely like making other people laugh, going through catharsis, doing the things that entertainers like to do. And then there are people who are pretty much chasing clout. They'll do anything for views, and it's super obvious. They're posting videos of like fake fights and pranks, doing dangerous stunts. And what do you do to get to the point that you're swinging your friends around on a bulldozer? Like, do you really think in yourself, what do I want to create? Like, what would make me happy? What do I want to express? And then go out and do that? I'm sorry, but we've really commodified stupidity. All viral videos are not bad, but I think the best ones were not made for the intention of just getting views. And I think the industry is kind of dangerous at this point. And those videos are really not fun to watch. Like you can tell when someone made something that's just sensational so that it goes viral.
And the thing is, it still works. There's enough money behind these types of creators. Look, who rents a crane and puts it in the middle of a lake in Utah? Can you do that tomorrow? What would go into that process and that planning? You have to have a lot of things behind you and money backing you to do so. So there's more people involved in this than just these two, but they're the names and they're the ones that are getting put forward on this. Let's jump to this next story, you guys. These types of things happen in court sometime, and every time I feel so much sympathy for the victims here. Let's go to this insane story.
Base, can we get back up in 560 now? Scott?
Stay there. Don't
have him
move.
sit down, Scott.
Don't move.
Have him scoot in, and if you could just stand behind him, please. I didn't hear Base respond, did you?
No, go cover me.
So that was in a Cincinnati courtroom on yesterday when the man who ran up and attacked the defendant there, Tonio Hughes, he attacked Deshaun Brown. Deshaun Brown is accused of murdering Hughes' 3-year-old son and the mother of his child, 29-year-old Natisha Lattimore. Hughes also was able to get several solid punches in, as you saw there before he was pulled off. Let's go to another angle of that because you'll be able to see all the attention that he received once he jumped on that suspect. Let's watch.
What happened? He jumped over? Yeah, hit him pretty good. What's wrong with you?
Chill out, dude. Take him there. No, come with me. All right, don't. I got it. You're taking
Chill out. Chill out.
No.
Chill out.
Sit down. Sit.
Nope.
Sit down now.
So he tried again, and I could almost understand it. Let's go to the details of why he did this. So the man who was charged with the December 2020 murders of Natisha Lattimore and her 3-year-old son Nilo appeared in court on Friday. Cincinnati Police Specialist Kimberly Kelly and Natisha had been pregnant with Brown's baby earlier that year, and she had a miscarriage again. So the woman that was murdered was pregnant with this defendant's baby. She had a miscarriage. Mr. Brown had told his friend that he was very upset and that since she killed their baby, he was going to do something to her baby, Nilo. The Hamilton County coroner said Natisha Lattimore died from stab wounds. Debtors said Brown killed Nilo after his mother's death, but before disposing of her body. And according to debtors, Brown put Nilo, the baby, into the Ohio River alive. Family members spotted a stroller that looked like Nilo's near the bridge, and police confirmed that it did belong to the 3-year-old baby. Nilo's body still hasn't been found. Several search efforts were made to find him, but none were successful. Now, after Nilo's father jumped on that defendant in court, as you saw there, Police officers jumped on him, held him back, took him down, took him out of there. Now afterwards, he was charged with contempt of court, which you could expect. But what I was thinking though was, man, there's gotta be some levers here. We talk about crimes of passion, but this was just an attack in a courtroom from a guy who's handcuffed. He had got a couple shots in the top side of his head. I'm not sure if that's much of it's actual assault. But when it comes to these types of things, it can't be done in courtrooms. I understand that, but you gotta understand the emotions that are there and maybe just don't have them there. I don't know the solution to this, Jess.
Yeah, when I think about, people who have loved ones, I imagine if it was my family, right? I think it's not that we love retribution, we love violence, we love when people get hurt, but I do feel like a sense of justice and righteousness when this guy gets a punch in, and I really think it's empathy. It reminds me of that film, A Time to Kill, with McConaughey and Samuel L. Jackson and Sandra Bullock, where you have this man whose daughter was, brutally attacked, almost died, and he goes and kills the guys who did it. And he gets off on basically an insanity plea, because that's really what this kind of thing does to your brain. I can't imagine what kind of mental state I would be in if this happened to people that I love. And so I think it's really not a love of retribution or violence. It's just like empathy. Like if you're in this state of mind, I really do think you should be able to, shirk criminal charges because you're not thinking in a clear, rational state. I think you could probably be able to get off with an insanity plea here.
Yeah, well, I guess the one thing is they did sentence him to 7 days at the Hamilton County Justice Center. So he got 7 days for his attack, understandable. You can't do it there because what if the guy is actually innocent in another situation? He's innocent and you're attacking people because you think of what happened. I understand it, I get it. Let's wrap up really fast, you guys. I think we can squeeze this last one. And this has been trying to get held for about a week. I'm glad you're here, Jessica, for this. Let's watch.
Guess what? You see my outfit? I got a ticket for indecent exposure in Winfield, Louisiana. Okay, indecent exposure. All of my bits are covered. Are you kidding me? At a family event where there's alcohol being literally handed out for free, and that's a family event, and 3 female cops came up to me and gave me a ticket. I live a mile down the road. They literally could have just been like, hey ma'am, could you put some clothes on? And I would have been like, yeah, cool, I'll be right back. But no, they stood there and gave me a ticket for indecent exposure. Are you kidding me?
Seems like they should be kidding. That woman named Casey is in Louisiana. She was cited for indecent exposure. She went into more details. Let's watch more.
Story time on my citation that I got yesterday for indecent exposure. For those of you that are like, it's blank, it's fake. I promise you, this is too stupid for me to make up, okay? It's not blank. It's just really, really light because she wrote like indecent exposure. Because she wrote really light on the top paper, it didn't go through like this, it looks blank, but I promise you it's there. So I went to this festival here in my little small town. It's like 90+ degrees, humidity is over 80%. It's hot. So I'm wearing a crop top and shorts. Hey, we're just sitting there enjoying the band. When I look over and I see 3 female cops walking my direction. Didn't think anything of it, I wasn't doing anything wrong. She goes, I'm gonna give you a citation. I ask her why. She does this, and she said, look at you. Okay, but why am I getting a citation? She said that I'm getting it for indecent exposure. So I decided to wear it. The first day I wear something revealing, I get cited for it. And in the state of Louisiana, indecent exposure is actually a felony offense.
It's a felony offense. Let's go with some details really fast because this is crazy. The Winfield Police Department was seemingly responding to Casey's TikTok post. Now, she put that on TikTok and got their attention. Now they say this. An unnamed citizen was cited for a city ordinance and has since taken to a popular social media site blasting police officers. However, 3 female officers responded to various complaints about the person's attire, and the person of interest was issued a citation under the city ordinance. On a local level, the ordinance is as follows. It shall be unlawful for any person to wear pants, trousers, shorts, skirts, dresses, or skirts, is it 1993, in any public space or places open to the public, which either intentionally exposes undergarments or intentionally exposes any portion of the pubic hair, cleft of buttocks, or genitals. That's as stated by a Facebook post from the Winfield Police Department. Jessica, you might not want to go down to who knows where, Louisiana, dressed like you may want to in the summertime.
It's hot out. It's pretty simple. It is hot out. I mean, You can be forced to carry a pregnancy to term. You're told what to wear. I mean, there's really limited freedoms for women in the United States right now. And when I think about what the cops are doing, they absolutely have better things to do. I am so sick of our police being used to enforce traditionalist conservative views, upholding state and capitalist power, imposing white supremacy. Like, go test rape kits. Why are you policing crop tops? I am so sick of this. It's ridiculous.
Insanity. Again, all these things are connected. We talked, again, at the top, we talked about this reversal of Roe versus Wade. There is a constant mindset, and it pushes through the society and thought process is these women shouldn't have rights to do what they want. You saw what that woman was wearing. What does that do to a 7-year-old? Does he become a deviant? Does he start committing crimes? Does he start cussing? He probably already is. Because he sees life. But there's a billboard probably right behind her that has gore and violence, or has something about ED medications and how men have to get their penises hard again. You'll see that everywhere. I've said it before on the show. I'll listen to ESPN Morning Sports Talk Radio with my 10-year-old kid on the way to school, and we hear more about penis enlargement, crooked penises, and things like that more than anything else. But if woman shows off a belly button and thighs, oh my God, they've been corrupted. It's insane. It's just
God bless America.
Straight up. God bless you guys for being here with me this entire week as I broadcast from the lockdown edition of Watch List. Thank you, Jessica, for wrapping up the week with me. A horrific beginning to the weekend. We'll see what kind of fights can come from this. Appreciate you. You can catch her on Rebel HQ. You can also catch her on all the TYT shows when she pops up and lets you guys and blesses you with her presence. Up next is John Idarola with the Damage Report. We'll see you guys on Monday.